You don't need a holiday to show someone you care. 1-800-Flowers marches on all year round. Send clovers for St. Patrick's Day, red, white, and blue roses for Liberty Week, or maybe even some in replacement for a Hug a Newsman Day. Get 15% off your purchase when you go to the FBIApodcast.com webpage and click our 1-800-Flowers.com coupon link at the bottom of the page, or go to 1-800-Flowers.com and enter the code FBIAPodcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
I'm Kyle, and today we are joined by Neal Coolong with Steelers Wire and USA Today Sports. We have Neal here. He's going to talk Steelers with us. Neal, I don't know how we got you to agree to this, but thank you so much for taking the time.
It's certainly my pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me.
We definitely are excited, especially we're like, wait a minute, USA Today Sports, that's legitimate. No, how... And then we were convinced, like, oh, he's going to find out that we're idiots, and then that's the end of that. But no, you're still here. That's amazing.
Well, my first thought was you guys will find out that I'm an idiot, so that works out pretty well for both of us.
We're already connecting. I love it. So let's talk about you first before we get into the season. How long have you been a fan of the team?
I would say this, and I'll boil it down as simply as possible, but my parents are from Pittsburgh. I lived out in Pittsburgh when I was really young. My dad's job moved him around a bit, a couple different places. We ended up settling in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And at that point, my whole family, they're all Steelers fans, but this is at a time that you don't get direct TV. So really, they're only Monday Night Football and, you know, the recently started Sunday Night Football are the only opportunities that you ever get to see the team that your dad is rooting for. You know, and that has an effect, I think, on your fandom. So I would say growing up, I was more a fan of players than I was a team. I wanted to be a Steelers fan. It was great. Every time they were on national TV, we'd have a big party. You know, I got free food. I got to stay up late. It was, you know, fantastic for, 7, 8-year-old kid. But for me, it was Jerry Rice. It was John Elway. I mean, guys like that, the real, Hall of Fame guys from the 1980s. I just really enjoyed watching certain players play. I believe it was 1994 though. We had found out about a bar in St. Paul that had actually hosted, a bunch of, migrated airport workers from an airline that had it used to hub in Pittsburgh, but they moved it to Minneapolis. These guys came with it. They all lived in and around St. Paul, right by the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, and they all threw in some money and convinced the owner to get a satellite. And this is like the first year that direct ticket was available, or NFL Sunday Ticket was available. So they said, we'll all come in, we'll pay you this money to pay for the service if you promise to put the Steelers games on Sunday. So we did, and word got out throughout town, and for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of Pittsburgh natives living in the Twin Cities area. This bar was packed every Sunday. My dad found out about it. He thought this was the greatest thing in the world. So naturally, we're going after church. We're hauling down to St. Paul to watch the Steelers game, and they happened to be really good that year. That was 1994. Phenomenal year, and watching, I'd been a fan probably more of the offensive side of the game up until that point, but watching that team play defense, watching guys like Greg Lloyd, like Levon Kirkland, it was the coolest thing in the world. It's like, these guys are absolute badasses. How can I not root for this? So from there, it really just took off. And I've missed maybe 5 games that they've played since then, and it really it speaks to what the Steelers nation is. It's far bigger than the city of Pittsburgh. There are far more Steelers fans outside of Pittsburgh than there are inside of it. And that generation, the one that I'm in, the diaspora generation of Pittsburgh, it has spread roots, and they're having kids now of their own. And what we're finding is the connection to the team is as strong as the connection to the city. In some cases, it's basically the same thing. So it's hard to let go of that. I mean, it truly is a cultural thing. It's not about the NFL. It's not about, even football. It's about the Steelers. It's about home.
You just took us on a journey there, man. That was excellent. And I'm going to add too and say there's a lot of Steeler fans here in Alaska. Oddly enough, not as much in the big city of Anchorage, but when I go out to the boroughs, I'm talking like middle of nowhere, have to take a helicopter to even get there. I'm like, what? That guy's got a Ben Roethlisberger jersey. What the hell? So they are out there. There are Steelers fans everywhere. Now, you're now writing for USA Today and definitely dedicated to, being a Steelers fanatic writer. But what was it that actually drove you to become a professional writer?
I felt like I could always write, and maybe this is a good way to explain it. I remember a biology class that I took in high school. I'm not a science guy. I'm not a math guy. Those things don't do well with me. We don't agree. And I didn't do too well in like the first two sections of the class, the test that we would take, multiple choice, that whole bit. It got, I think, like a C- and a D+ or something. The third one, though, our teacher told us they wanted to try something else. It was more of a literary section. It was more, memorizing facts and things like that, but you had to explain what the problems were. So they told us in advance that the test on this section was going to be an essay. I got an A on the essay test. Now, was any of that, right? I don't know, but it sounded really good. So my thought was, well, I can make this writing thing work. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do it, but I ended up, I went to North Dakota State University, and when I started there, I was a psychology major. I wanted to get into that. My sister's a clinical psychologist. I thought that was really cool, and I still do. But I was sitting around our union one afternoon, and I had nothing to do, and I just kind of wandered around. And eventually, I somehow or other came up to the student newspaper office, which was on the third floor of the union, and I just went in and asked if I could cover a football game or something like that. So they sent me up that weekend to go cover a game, and it was the coolest thing in the world. I'm in a press box. They're a Division II team at this point. They're the 4-time FCS defending national champions now, but they were a Division II school back at this time. And I'm getting free nachos. I'm sitting next to an NFL scout, and this is awesome. I can't play football, but I can, write about it. I can talk to people about it. This is awesome. I totally want to do this. And at the end of it, even better, they pass around a sheet. You get to write down the players that you're going to interview after the game. Now, keep in mind too, I'm 18 years old. I'm a complete idiot. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is like a fan. This is like a gift package or something that I want. And one of the people I wanted to talk to was on the opposition. The University of Northern Colorado is who they played in that game. And I talked to the scout, probably to the point where, he got up and left and didn't come back because of me. But I talked to him about this guy, because he said he's there to watch him. He's probably going to be a top half of the draft pick. And I just got in his head wanting to know a little bit about him. So I wrote down a few things, and I wanted to go ask this player about some of the things the scout said. So they took me back to meet future Steelers great defensive end Aaron Smith. It's the first guy I ever interviewed.
Wow.
At that point, it was like, wow, this is for me. I absolutely love this. This is the coolest thing ever. And I went back and wrote like a 6,000-word feature story on the game itself, on Aaron Smith, on the draft. And my editor basically said, look, we'll take like 200 words of this, but don't ever do that again. I learned from that. Fortunately, I'm still probably way too long of a writer and a talker, as you can tell. But it was a natural fit for me, I think. I'm somebody that really enjoys hearing himself talk, unfortunately, and I enjoy talking about the game of football. I absolutely love it, and it never really got all that much for other sports for me, but for football, I always really enjoyed covering it, and I really enjoyed writing it, so I stuck with that.
I'll tell you, don't worry about going on too long. We're messaging ourselves back and forth going, wow, he's good at telling stories. I can sit here and listen to this. I am now regretting not having like popcorn or anything. So no, keep it up. That's
we never get mad about somebody who's passionate, and we can definitely tell that not only do you know your stuff, but you are passionate about your history and the team and everything. And we love that, especially when somebody comes in here and like just kind of takes the reins and runs with it, because you have to be careful about, who you bring on. And sometimes you get somebody who knows their stuff, but just isn't as good of a talker. And like, we definitely know that you're both. So it's great having you on this way.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's rare when I'm not told to shut up after 2.5 minutes of whatever diatribe that I'm on.
Well, I'm definitely impressed when I'm going like, wait a minute. We're talking about professional sports writing. He's talking about like a high school science test. That we're going somewhere. I'm like, all right. I'm never going to hear anything like that from anybody else we interview again. So I'm definitely impressed. Like I said, you're taking us on journeys.
Try this one out on your next guest, because this is a part I forgot to point out. I mean, in all honesty, the best part of that job, my freshman year in college, was the fact that they were paying me for this. So I'd write just enough to be able to buy a case of Keystone Light on Friday, and I'd cover the game on Saturday. Usually, still kind of hungover from the night before, but it was like, wow, I got $30 to write these 5 stories this week, and I'm giving it to my guy who's got the fake ID. He's going to buy me some cheap beer that's going to last me the weekend. God, I miss college. That was so much fun. Nothing else mattered all week. You got free food, and outside of that, it was like, oh, I just need to find a way to get beer, and now I can watch a football game. I can talk to people about it, and that's going to pay for my Busch Light or whatever it is that I bought.
Yeah, if you're telling me at 18, hey, you're going to watch a sporting event and have a couple beers, and by the way, get paid for it. It's like, yeah, you go ahead and sign me up for life. So I'm definitely, now that we're on board with your descriptions, we're on board. I know Ron's excited. Strongest memory of the team, good or bad, please share with us.
Oh man, I could give you 10 off the top of my head. It's strongest, and this is my answer today, and I reserve the right to change that answer in an hour. I would say that the win over Baltimore in the AFC Championship game in 2008, one, because that is still to this day the most physical and violent football game I've ever seen, and with the way the NFL has changed, and in my opinion, largely because of that game, we'll never see one like that again. And it was a very well played game. Really the difference between those two teams at that point was the fact the Steelers had a better quarterback, and that really was kind of that would be the story between them for the next couple of years as well. And now they've got a quarterback that's playing well enough, certainly, to beat him. He does a pretty good job in the postseason as well, but they destroyed Joe Flacco in that game. They absolutely killed him. And they were doing their share of hitting as well. I mean, guys were flying all over the place. It was just, it was the most intense Ravens-Steelers game ever. And that'll never be topped. The intensity of that game will just simply never be topped. They've played 4 times in the playoffs, and you couldn't combine the other 3 together and match the intensity of that game. It's probably the height of both of those teams. But I went to our fan club in St. Paul, moved around to a couple different places, and we ended up at this really nice place right by Excel Energy Center, downtown St. Paul, McGovern's Irish Pub. And we have like this entire top floor, and there's probably 500 people in there. The bandwagoners will jump on when they're in the playoffs. But the Eagles and Cardinals played the NFC Championship game before that. That was the first one, and the Steelers-Ravens game was the primetime one. My wife and I got there probably at halftime of the Eagles-Cardinals game, and it was completely packed. There were no seats anywhere, so we ended up, I think they brought out like 2 folding chairs for us to sit at this really cramped table with this older couple. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I don't want to drink during this game. There's just too many people here. It's kind of awkward. I don't know these people. I might start yelling or something. So I'm not going to do that. Going through the game, though, I'm really glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have been able to survive. It was so tense. It was so exciting. Every play had such a huge value to it. I've never seen a game like that. I don't think I ever will again. But when Ravens have the ball, they're down 16-14. I think there's under 2 minutes to go. Flacco kind of looks off one way, fires back the other way, and Polamalu reads him the entire way. He knows exactly what he's doing, picks it off, and the place just goes absolutely ballistic. I mean, seriously, chairs are flying everywhere, glasses are breaking on the ground. Everybody's just going nuts, myself included. And it was, the greatest thing in the world, because at that point he picked them off, the game's over. but he keeps going. He keeps going. He keeps going. Gets a block from Aaron Smith on the sideline, and he scores. I think I blacked out at that point. I went absolutely nuts to the point where I think I woke up, like 5 seconds later because I had, I was celebrating with everybody. It was like a mosh pit. I had this one guy. I was like pounding him up against a Golden Tee machine, just screaming at him, "We're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl." Everything kind of calmed down after that. But the side note to the story was that was NHL All-Star Weekend. Or no, maybe it was coming up, but the Los Angeles Kings were in town playing the Wild. I think they played the night before, and then there was like a couple days until, or maybe they were playing the next day, and then it was the All-Star break, something like that. But they were staying in town for that, for whatever reason. They were playing after the All-Star game. And Anze Kopitar and a couple other guys were there. They were just pounding beers with everybody. They were buying people shots. They became like adjunct Steelers fans for the night. And it was the most surreal set of, events in a 3-hour span that I've ever had in my life. That's probably the biggest. And I put way too much detail into that. So that was an absolute blast. I called.
No, don't apologize.
For work the next day. And that's the only time I've ever called in work because of a hangover. And ended up starting drinking after that just because it's like, hey, there's 3 NHL players that are offering me a drink. I'm going to buy it. Why not? Maybe they're hitting on my wife. I'm not sure, but I don't care.
All right.
You know what? I get it though. I'm right there with you. Yeah.
We're already 15 or 16 minutes in, and the Kyle is messaging me, and we're talking back and forth because we keep notes as we go throughout the show, and he just messages, this is going to go way longer than 45 minutes, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I don't have to do any editing here. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. So, but we do need to get into actually talking about the season. So let's go ahead and do that. Lots of highs and lows in last year. Steelers had problems beating the bad teams, but they didn't have any beating the good teams. Last season, it seemed as though Big Ben struggled with the age around him. Sometimes it seemed as though, the young players just, it was a factor. His offensive line's good. Got a nice young offensive line. Got a couple of nice, good young receivers, and obviously Le'Veon Bell is just a gift wrap present for you. Can you kind of walk us through how you felt about the season, and if you thought that there was any minor successes, and how the season was a success as a whole?
First, I got to give you props. Of all the people I've talked to about these things, I think you were the only one to point out age as an issue of the team, but not in a they're too old way. Truly, over the last 2 seasons, the biggest problem the team has had is the fact that they're super young. They had a lot of key players having to play far more snaps than I think the team was comfortable in doing. That was overshadowed by the age of a few players. But you look at 2013, the issue that they had on defense is largely caused by the fact that a 6th-round pick who didn't even dress in week 1 was their starter at inside linebacker in week 2. Vince Williams was on the bubble even making the team, and he had to start. That's a huge issue on a team that relies heavily on the communication ability, the run stopping, and the pass coverage of your inside linebackers. Vince Williams was not even close to prepared to play as often as he did. And it got to the point where Troy Polamalu was playing inside linebacker at 220 pounds. They got whipped against the run because they couldn't stop it because Larry Foote got hurt about 3/4 into the season, or 3/4 into week 1 of the season. A huge loss. Last year, you saw a similar kind of issue with Ryan Shazier. A young player, not one I think that should have been given the starting role right away, but they had to just simply because they have to get him better in a hurry. They have to get him out there. You saw a lot more issues with youth on the defensive line while there were still older players there. I mean, Stephon Tuitt couldn't play right away. Dan McCullers wasn't going to be able to play right away. Cam Thomas was a new player. Mike Mitchell was a new player in the secondary. You saw those issues, but you saw the defense get a lot better down the stretch. And that was one thing. On the other side of the ball, the offense that largely went through those same kinds of growing pains in 2013 exploded in 2014. It didn't take them long, just 1 or 2 possessions into week 1 against Cleveland. You saw how good they were, and it was like vindication for any Steelers fan that was saying to everybody all offseason, just wait till you see this offense play. I understand they started 0-4 in 2013, and as Ben Roethlisberger said himself, we're pretty much the worst team in football. They were that after 4 weeks, after losing to the Vikings in London. They were a terrible football team. They put it together. They won 8 out of their last 12 games. They nearly made the playoffs. But what you saw was the maturation of the rookie Le'Veon Bell. You saw the climb to excellence from Antonio Brown. You saw Ben Roethlisberger start to trust players again. He didn't do that at all in the first 4 weeks of the season. You almost couldn't blame him. He and Emmanuel Sanders were never on the same page. Didn't have that problem last season. Antonio Brown, basically should have been impossible for him to have a better season in 2014 than he did in 2013, but he did. The guy's a first-team All-Pro player, easily one of the at worst, second or third best receivers in the NFL. The offense is stacked with talent. Martavis Bryant is coming in. You have all of these things, but you've got to get something on the defensive side of the ball to kind of bring it all together. Now, the question this year is whether they've done that. It's probably not going to be something that they will do in terms of free agency or even the draft. It would have had to have been additions that they made or the work put in by a guy who's already on the roster. They're banking heavily on internal improvement, and because of that, I think 2015 gets very exciting for this team.
Dang. All right.
I
don't even know where to go.
Let's talk about the end of the season here. It was a very strange end because we watched Le'Veon Bell get hurt, and it was a tough kind of thing to see a team headed into the playoffs without basically what had become the star of the football team. And then as you go into the game's playing out strangely. You're playing in a tough team. And then you see Ben Roethlisberger get hit, who's been trying to carry the team through the whole game. He gets hit hard, knocked out of the game, and then you get backup Bruce Gradkowski, right? That's how you say his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, he comes in, and Kyle and I joked about how that guy looked like a Steeler with his beard and everything, and he has like the last name that just screams Steeler. And it was funny. He comes in and he immediately completes a nice big pass, and everything's looking okay at that moment. And then all of a sudden Big Ben comes right back in, and it to us it just looked, we could see it from TV, from sitting on our couches, that it just looked, he did not look like he was okay to come into the football game. And we were just really concerned with, first of all, his overall safety. Secondly, what they were doing as a coaching staff to let him come back on the field when you're so close to scoring that touchdown, and then he comes in and immediately throws that pick. And it was obvious at that point that it was a timing issue. He was groggy. He didn't look right. And it just was a rough end of the season. We didn't like how it ended. And we're not even Steelers fans. There were so many mistakes made in that moment, and we just couldn't understand it. Can you expand on that a little bit for us?
And what's interesting to me about that game is, on one hand, Le'Veon Bell's absence was huge, to the point where I was surprised anybody was picking Pittsburgh. I mean, he was the team's MVP for a reason. His value, more than anything else, is in the passing game. It's in pass protection, and it's in providing an outlet. If you had watched the two games against Baltimore in the regular season, there were times Le'Veon Bell made C.J. Mosley look like an absolute chump. He had no business covering him in the open field, and the Steelers leaned on that heavily in their 43-23 win. Bell had 8 catches, I think, and 7 of them were on Mosley. Mosley was nowhere near him. I don't think he even had the tackle when he'd catch the ball. He was supposed to be covering him, but he wasn't anywhere close to him. Not having him in that game was death. I didn't think they had a chance in the world. Baltimore's a very good football team. It was the difference maker between the two teams really was Le'Veon Bell, and not having him in the game was going to really, really hurt. And the Steelers tried everything they could to get Ben Tate involved early to establish that run. And to me, having watched the team extensively, it looked to me like they were off to a good start. They felt good about what they were doing, and then Tate fumbled. Bell didn't fumble all year. Bell only fumbled once last year. It was weird to see a Steelers running back fumble the ball. And this is after, there was a game in 2012 in which the Steelers fumbled 7 times or something like that. Seeing the difference between that bad team and this good one is defined by Le'Veon Bell, and not having him in that game killed him. With all due respect to Baltimore, I don't mean to say that they didn't play well. They didn't earn the victory. They certainly did. But the pass rush that they had was it accentuated that much more by knowing they don't have a running back in the backfield that can both carry the ball and block and catch if they need him to. So you put all those things together, you have a huge loss on the offensive side of the ball. But Roethlisberger kept him in it. Martavis Bryant made a huge catch at one point in the game. Antonio Brown was making catches down the field, and Ben was getting tagged. I mean, he was just getting beat up. I think the last one that he got may have been, kind of the anvil that broke the camel's back. But when he came in at that point in the game, he was just gunning it anywhere. I don't know. I mean, you hear everybody saying, well, he wasn't right. He shouldn't have been in the game. He didn't look right, blah, blah, blah. He didn't look all that great all the game anyway. Why? Because Terrell Suggs was in his face most of the time. He has a tendency to do that. Quarterbacks don't play all that well when they play Baltimore, because Baltimore puts quarterbacks on their asses all the time. That's really what that franchise is known for, and that's what they're really good at. Even with that touchdown at the end, the game is essentially out of reach. I mean, if you want to look at really what killed the Steelers, it wasn't Roethlisberger's interceptions at the end. It wasn't the multiple concussions guys incurred down the stretch. It was in the second half, third and long play. The Ravens ran Steve Smith on kind of a delayed drag across the middle. The idea of the play was to draw Troy Polamalu in and really bait him into trying to jump a route. And you watch it, you see Joe Flacco raise his shoulders just a little bit. Just as he does that, Polamalu tries to cut in front of Smith, and then Smith starts to fade back a little bit. Flacco hits him with a pass down the sideline. He doesn't get a first down on the play, but he picked up like 13 of the 14 yards that they needed, set up a 50-yard field goal, which you can count on two hands the amount of 50-yard field goals that have been successful in Heinz Field. Tucker buries it. Absolutely buries it. It keeps them ahead by 2 possessions. To me, that was the game. It wasn't so much the offense the Steelers weren't able to generate. It was the little plays like that, little things that the Ravens were able to exploit, and then just sit back and let their pass rush take care of the rest. And that's exactly what they did. The secondary didn't need to worry about the run at all because the Steelers couldn't run, not against that front seven, not with not a back. And even in passing, they could stay back a little bit because they weren't going to be able to throw anything deep. There was just too much pressure coming. The long and the short of it, I mean, the Steelers were, undermanned for that game. Plain and simple, they were undermanned. And as I talked to a couple Ravens fans after it, I'm looking forward to the game next year, and they are as well. So I think you'll see the two of them fighting for the division title again. It's going to be a lot of fun, like it always is.
A couple of the dramas I wanted to talk to you about, we had a chance to talk with Jack Finn, and he got through the more formal stuff, I would say, that we get the writers on to talk about. So let's get to the soap operas that happened with the Steelers this last year. Number one I want to get to is LeGarrette Blount. That whole thing it was really confusing to me. I didn't understand how this was going down. I mean, you hear about how LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell are together all the time. They got in trouble with the whole possession thing, and a lot of people blame LeGarrette Blount for that because Bell wouldn't have been in that situation if he hadn't been with him at all. And then you see him, he's kind of taking that backup role. He doesn't get many snaps. Bell is just getting better and better and better. There's no reason to put LeGarrette Blount in. Bell is basically playing every single snap of the game. And it's obvious at that point that LeGarrette Blount's getting irritated that he's not seeing the football. So during that, I think it was a Sunday night football game, he basically walks out on the team. And this just seems weird. And I just wanted to know what your take on it was and what you kind of saw from other writers and if you had any contact with people that were actually with the team and kind of if there was any feelings about that from them.
Yeah, with behind the steel curtain, we had a couple of reporters who were in the locker room for home games and practices and things. We didn't have anybody at Tennessee that night. It was a Monday night game. But we had Blount in audio saying a couple weeks prior to that, I think it was probably after week 6, week 7, somewhere in there. He was saying then that he was starting to get upset the fact that he wasn't getting the ball. And at this point in the narrative, it's hard to just look at him walking off the field and make a judgment 100% on that. Now, that said, I agree with you. I couldn't imagine for anything walking out on the team before the game is over. I don't care how much time is left on the clock. You leave when the team leaves, which is when the game is over. I ripped on Carson Palmer after the 2005 playoff game because Sports Illustrated had this big, sad woe is me Carson Palmer story when he tore his ACL. And one of the things that they framed in the story was the fact that he was listening to the game on the radio on the way home. Like, where are you going? You're the captain of the team. You don't just get to go home because you're not going to play. That to me, that's inexcusable. And I don't like what LeGarrette Blount did. I hope LeGarrette Blount doesn't like what LeGarrette Blount did. But everything I heard from inside the team at the beginning of the season was the plan was that Bell would be the main back. But we're talking like a 60-40 split of carries. And the team tried to do that fairly early. So to me, the question really was it okay for the team to go in the direction they did with Bell? And a couple compelling factors in this. So one, LeGarrette Blount's production dropped over the last 5-6 games of that season before he walked off. His production dropped a bit. You know, he was under 3 yards a carry. He hadn't broken a run. Now, if you want to blame the offensive line, okay. If you want to blame the scheme, all right, fine, whatever. If you wanted to keep LeGarrette Blount for the long term, you needed to get him the ball a little bit more. If LeGarrette Blount wanted to get the ball a little bit more, he needed to do more when he was on the field. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of a chicken versus the egg thing. Either way, though, the overriding issue is the fact that Le'Veon Bell was beating the hell out of the Titans in that game. He ran all over them. That fourth quarter, honestly, I'll watch that again, and I'll still get excited about it. They whipped that team. You don't see one team dominate on the ground in the fourth quarter as much like that, even in the Steelers' history. You have to go back to Bettis and Cowher, probably in 2004, to see a team close another team out like that. It was beautiful. It was Steelers football.
Especially on the ground in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. It didn't feel like that at all. It was just a matter of time now. It's like Bell's going to score here eventually. I mean, they were killing him. I don't think Blount not getting the ball in that game should have been much of a surprise, but I don't think him not getting the ball was the plan in that game. I think Bell was just really good, and I think that speaks to really where the fracture in the relationship came. Bell turned into a much better player than people thought he was going to be, and Blount was not as effective as people thought he was going to be. I don't think the team gave him Blount the impression that he wasn't going to get the ball in a game. So I think he was pissed off because of that. That doesn't justify him walking off on the field, but I do think he received a different message during the season, maybe even before that game, and it just wasn't acceptable to him anymore. Another side of it, Blount left the field literally as they were kneeling out the game. Again, a punk move, you shouldn't do it, but it's not like there were still, actionable plays going on or anything. The game was essentially over. It's unfortunate. I thought he would do a lot better in Pittsburgh than he did. I think though he's earning the reputation that he has. And it's great that he rushed for 2.5 yards a carry in the Super Bowl and he has a ring and all that, but I don't think he's going to do a whole lot else probably after next season either.
I'll say as the Colts fan that typically when LeGarrette Blount looks amazing is when he's playing the Colts, because he's got their number, but you remove those games and, like you said, he's often disappointing. He should be doing better. And I personally don't understand being upset with your teammate when he's doing so good. Like you said, you watched Le'Veon Bell in that game. There's no doubt that they were going to win because Le'Veon Bell was just destroying, the defense there. It was like nobody was even trying to stop him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate. And the reason I guess I'm so, guarded about it is because I was a big fan of the signing last year. I thought that was going to work out great. They were going to have a great stable of running backs, and they were really going to run the ball. They wanted to do that. Bell turned out to be a lot better than people thought he was going to be. And I'm on record as saying that I wasn't thrilled with the selection of Bell in the second round. I thought he was more of a third-round running back in 2013. And I wasn't impressed with him early in his time with Pittsburgh, but certainly, give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a young player. They're giving him a lot of carries and a lot of touches. He's going to come into his own the more work that he gets. A great finish to the season, a great game against Green Bay in Week 16, a classic game, in my opinion. Bell ran very well. They blocked very well. It was a must-win game. He did well there to the point where you could feel some momentum. He's going to be a decent player coming up. He drops 20 pounds, and he's an all-world player. So to suggest now that Bell was clearly going to be a first-team All-Pro running back in 2014, I think is a bit ridiculous. That's why the team brought in Blunt. They didn't think he was going to be who he was. That changed. And because of that, their mentality toward the position changed. And I think Blunt was under the impression he was going to be included more, even if Bell was doing really well. And there's some logic to say, you know what, give him 5 carries a game because he might need him. Because, hey, you know what might happen? It might be the second half in week 17 and a win over Cincinnati, and he gets his knee hyperextended and a cheap hit down the field. Because of that, you don't have a running back against Baltimore the next week in the playoffs. Then what are you going to do? Is that, if you know that's the end result, is that worth giving Blunt 5 carries a game and trying to get him something and keeping him happy with what he is because of what he's going to need to serve later on in the season? Hindsight's 20/20, but many people will say, and I think it's a fair argument to make, that they could have given him a few more carries just to keep him more involved. In other words, to not let a distraction be created. But even Maurkice Pouncey said, look, if he was going to complain, and get him out of here. If it was going to be a problem, I didn't see it as a problem at this point in time. But if he was going to be upset after that, then get him out of here. We don't need him. Either way, the point here, I think, really is that I'm pretty sure that was the first question they asked D'Angelo Williams. Are you going to be okay with not getting the ball at some point? And his answer is probably the reason why they signed him.
Now, another thing I want to get your take on is the way in which he went from the Steelers to the Patriots. And I understand that all we can really do is speculate, but it definitely seemed a little unusual that he was taken back into the Patriots so quickly, and especially during press week at the Super Bowl. He didn't exactly confirm that he was told that he'd have a home, but he definitely hinted at it, which is, of course, tampering. And I personally find that really hilarious, especially now that the Patriots have asked the league to look into the Jets tampering and trying to get Darrelle Revis. So I'm more than a little confused by the Patriots' actions, but can you give us any insight whatsoever, even if it's just speculation, as to whether or not you think there's any tampering of any kind going on with LeGarrette Blount's decision?
Well, let's clear this up first. At the Super Bowl media day, there are literally hundreds of reporters there, and you could have had 60 of them in front of LeGarrette Blount at any one time. I've seen plenty of situations in which one guy says one thing and 7 of the 10 reporters that are present report it differently. Ultimately, you have to kind of look between the lines of what is being said. Blount got not a ton more, but he got more money to sign a 2-year deal with Pittsburgh than New England was offering him. We know that. He signed with Pittsburgh for the money. He probably would have had, a rotational type of system in which he would have gotten the ball more in New England than he would have in Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh would have said, 2/3 of the carries here are probably going to go to Bell, but we need you to spell that. We need you to kind of come in particular on short yardage and run that outside zone that you run so well with the Patriots. That's what we want. He ends up getting upset about that. The Patriots never closed the door. They made him an offer. It was just less than Pittsburgh. So now that Pittsburgh has released him, hey, our offer's still on the table. Here it is. Do you want it? Sure. No one else is going to hire me now. Why wouldn't I go back to this team? That is very likely what happened. Now, is it possible the Patriots, they spoke with Blount's agent. They talked to him about, his lack of playing time, how he wants to go to New England if he isn't going to get the ball. And the Patriots set him up with some diabolical scheme to walk off the field after he doesn't get the ball with 3 seconds left in the game in order to make Pittsburgh release him so the Patriots can sign him for the cheap. I suppose that's possible too. I really don't think that's as likely as the Patriots doing what they always do, which is, buying low and being able to sell high later on. With Blount, he's a guy that was comfortable with their system. And, in reference to the Colts comment earlier, the Colts can't stop that scheme. It's not Blount. The Patriots are an underrated technical rushing football team. They do very well with what they do. A great outside zone running team, a great goal line running team. And that's where Blunt has had the success that he's had in New England. And let's keep in mind, too, he's not a 1,500-yard running back or anything. There's a reason they don't give him the ball 20 times a game. He's not that talented of a player. He's a good one, but he's not, ridiculously skilled to the point every other team in the league would have lined up to sign him. It's not just the attitude. The Patriots knew what they were getting with him, but more than anything, they knew he's already been paid by Pittsburgh. The Steelers can they'll still have to, pay off whatever's left in terms of, guaranteed money for the season. He's already getting paid. We can pay him nothing now. We can offer even less than what we offered before. So it's a smart move on their part. It's a comfortable player in the middle of the season that, in which they could have used a little bit of spark in their running game. So to me, I don't see any tampering issues there. And even if there were, does it really matter? Pittsburgh probably got rid of him at the right time anyway. He still walked off the field. If you wanted to play in New England that badly, fine, go there and play it. I don't.
I'm going to say it does matter. Screw the Patriots.
Yeah, there's that.
But that's
angle
just
of it.
me.
And I'm not. My thing is, it's an example. The Patriots don't get the credit that they deserve as a team. That is an excellently coached team. I know we hate them. Everybody hates them. They're easy to hate. They're a well-coached team. Blunt is only a part of that. And if you hate the Patriots and Blunt at the same time, I'll say this. Watch Blunt run in the Super Bowl. He looked like a dog. He was finished. He had nothing left. And that was a 2-week, a 2-week rest after he gave basically everything he had left with the Colts. Watching him at the end of last season, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't on the team. Watch what the Patriots do in terms of the draft. They're not going to, just let Blunt try to replace Shane Vereen. They're going to bring in other guys, and Blunt may not even be on that team.
Now, let's get a little off the Patriots and back to the Steelers. I was really kind of just hoping you'd be like, yeah, screw the Patriots, but you wanted to be a professional about it, and that's fine too.
I hate the Patriots.
Yeah, but your professionalism had to be there, and I have to respect it, and you made a valid point, but still, screw them. But hey, I'm really disappointed you weren't just going to be childish and on my stupid idiot level on that one. And but anyway, let's
get into Danny Amendola and other key free agent signings the Patriots have made. They make Blunt out to be like he's some kind of hero. He really didn't do anything for the team outside of that Colts game. And with all due respect to the Colts, a lot of teams ran on them pretty well. I saw the Steelers go all over them.
Yeah, they.
That's not a great defensive team. It really isn't. They played the Bengals the first round of the playoffs. That's what that was.
Yeah, that it really is. And the Broncos were weak. And well, speaking of defense, there is massive change going on in Pittsburgh. Obviously, you got Troy Polamalu, not what he was. Is he leaving? Is he retiring? We don't know. And then obviously Dick LeBeau. That's a mainstay for so long. And is this going to change the identity of the team on defense, or are they still going to have the same core values? And what can we really expect to see in this upcoming season?
I think it will change the identity of the defense. I think that's exactly why they did it. I get the mystique of the Steelers and the defense and the tradition that they've had. Look back over the last 4 years, they're nowhere close to that. They're in the bottom half of the league in sacks and takeaways over the last 4 years. They've added a ton of personnel to the roster on the defensive side of the ball with high draft picks, and they haven't gotten anything from it. A change was needed, period. I don't know if there's a more simple way to explain it than that. Dick LeBeau is in the Hall of Fame for a reason. He will be revered in the city of Pittsburgh, forever, essentially. It was time for a change. And I understand that he was surprised. I understand that he was, somewhat upset. And I understand that both the Cardinals and the Titans and probably others were getting in line to bid for his services. Good. Great for him. Great for him. Sometimes it's not about a personal issue when you're making a move with a coach. Sometimes it's not what the coach did wrong. Sometimes it's just simply that there are far more players than there are coaches. And you need to bring in a coach that's going to get to the players that we have here now and get more out of them. It doesn't mean that Dick LeBeau is a bad man. It doesn't mean he's a bad coach at all. It just means they needed to do something else. It wasn't working. It rarely worked ever since James Harrison destroyed the Browns receiver, Muhammad Massaquoi, picked up $50,000 worth of fines, and started a much more hesitant defense in a league now that requires you to take the ball away and to get to the quarterback before he throws it. Not that those things weren't important before. No defense does well in the NFL today if you don't do those things. And the Steelers have done not those things over the last 4 years. This year, they had, 33 sacks. That one of the lowest totals in the league and one of the lowest in the franchise for however long. This is a year in which you're starting two outside linebackers. One is the 17th overall pick a season ago, and the other one is your transition player making $9.75 million. You're doing everything you can to invest in this. You have a first-round pick in an inside linebacker. Your second-round pick is a defensive end. You retained a 36-year-old veteran on a $1.75 million contract to come in and play to try to generate something of pass rush. Couldn't do it. They still couldn't do it. At what point do you say, well, the coach is right, he's done this for 50 years, therefore he's the right man for this job? In my mind, I wasn't overly surprised by it. I will stand and applaud for Dick LeBeau the way I did in Canton, Ohio in 2010 when they put him in the Hall of Fame for the rest of my life. But I don't think he was the right man for this job anymore. Now, it puts even more pressure on Keith Butler, but a change needed to be made.
I understand. Definitely agree that is often the case. He's not a bad man. He's just not the right man at this particular date and time. And yeah, that's just the reality of the league.
Okay, we are pushing up against time here, Neal, and so I'm going to have to kind of jab you with the fork here and kind of get you to move. We're going to have to move along a little bit quicker because we have so much we wanted to get to with you. But real quick, we want your take on the Jason World's retirement and how it just kind of came out of left field. Not necessarily the retirement, but just in the reasons that he's retiring and the way that it kind of came about. It really caught everybody off guard, and I believe the Steelers were they're just shocked by it.
Yeah, I think everybody was shocked by it in the sense that they didn't think that he would turn down that much money to and just not play anymore. He wanted to stay in Pittsburgh, but he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh at a certain price that he felt he was going to be able to get in free agency. I don't know whether he got that or not. I know that Pittsburgh wasn't going to give him more than probably an average of 5.5 a year. He didn't want to play for that. And, I think we can just paint between the lines and say whether he got it or not, he just didn't really want to play anymore. And those who know him will say they're surprised with the fact that he did just flat out retire, but they're not surprised in the sense that he's the kind of guy that they could see doing that. He made a lot of money. Not an insane amount or anything, but his faith is very important to him. That's what he wanted to do, and with that, he doesn't have to take beatings anymore. He doesn't have to play the game with only half his heart into it. And for that, I commend him. I mean, good for him. I wish we could have gotten more Jason World's second half of 2013 out of him last year, but that them's the breaks, I guess, and best of luck to him.
Let's talk a little bit more about next year. Free agency, pretty much. All the big names are taken. We're getting to teams just signing depth players, and in a lot of cases, waiting to see what they need after the draft. So looking ahead at the draft, there's a few positions that the Steelers could improve at. Nothing stands out as a critical need, but do you have anything that you would say that they definitely need to target, a position, a player, anything really standing out to you? We have been told pass rush and corner is probably where they're going to be looking, but I'd like to get your take on that.
I think an edge rusher and a cornerback are definitely in their positions of need. And that doesn't mean they're going to use a first-round pick on that. In fact, I'd say odds are pretty low of going with an outside linebacker at 22, just because I don't think one's going to be available that's worth the 22nd pick. I mean, it's a great edge rusher draft, but what that really means is more than likely 5 of them are going to go in the first 21 picks. I don't think there's going to be one there that will be a better player at 22 than another position will. And along with that, if you add up, 5 players at one position going, that means you've got a lot of the best players at other positions that are there. I wouldn't rule out offensive tackle. I look at a guy like TJ Clemmings from Pittsburgh, insane amount of potential in that kid. He doesn't really have a good idea of what he's doing because he hasn't really even played football very long, let alone left tackle. He came in I think he played 1 year of high school football. He was a basketball player. They were playing him on defense at Pitt initially. Then they moved him to offensive tackle. So he hasn't even had a consistent position, let alone a sport for a couple of years. If a guy like that were to fall to 22, Steelers are going to be very tempted to take him. As far as cornerback goes, I don't think you're going to look at a Trey Waynes. I don't think he's going to be on the board. I'm not incredibly overly impressed with the kid from Washington. Somehow I forgot his name. Marcus Smith, right? Wow, that's bad. I look at somebody like Kevin Johnson at Wake Forest as being a viable option for that pick at 22. That wouldn't surprise me. But to be honest with you, I think this is pretty open as far as what they're going to do. But in this draft, I do feel they need to add a cornerback and they need to add an outside linebacker because they're hurting at depth at both of those positions in the future. Not right now. I mean, either way, 22nd overall pick of the draft is rarely a guy that comes in and makes a huge impact anyway. So you look down the line, their cornerback position is more open in the next couple of years. William Gay is in the final year of his deal. Cortez Allen is still kind of in a prove-it situation, and Antoine Blake is a restricted free agent now. I mean, they might lose 2 cornerbacks next year. They're going to have to rebuild that position. So I would lean toward cornerback more than anything right now. If it's not the first round, second, third, fourth, maybe even 2 of them at some point.
One question I had for you, since we're talking defense and draft and all of the, corners and stuff like that, is if Landon Collins falls all the way down to that 22nd pick and you guys have a shot at him, is that something they take? Because he's a very similar type safety, I think, to Troy Polamalu, or at least in that realm of type of physical player at safety. Do you think that's something that they would want to get in order to maybe have Polamalu, who's, if he does play, is going to be in his last year, most likely, kind of help him transition? And who better to have training you, or at least help coach you and teach you the ropes than Troy Polamalu, who, in my opinion, is one of the best safeties in the last 10 years.
He definitely is. First and foremost, though, I highly doubt Troy Polamalu will be on the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2015. The only reason they're waiting as if they want him to make a decision is because if he doesn't retire, they're going to release him. And his contract was structured when they gave him an extension last year in such a way that it's a relatively painless post June 1 release. I mean, he's only taken $2.25 million in dead money this year and next year. That's not a huge amount with a cap that's been growing astronomically recently with even more TV deals coming in for the league. They can easily absorb that hit. What they wanted in 2014 was a veteran safety to help their new free safety get transitioned into the position. To me, that's a big part of why Polamalu played. I think they signed him to the extension with the idea that you're going to play every snap. We're not going to play backup Shamarko Thomas as long as you're here. They wanted a veteran in that position, and now they're going to get Mike Mitchell, a fully healthy Mike Mitchell for next year with a year under his belt. I think they're going to give the job to Thomas. Landon Collins is a nice player. I don't think I could compare him to Polamalu, but I don't think I can compare anybody to Polamalu as far as his athleticism, as far as his instincts. If anything, I'd say that Collins looks a lot more like Mike Mitchell. He's a taller guy, he's a bigger guy, very downhill heavy, a big hitting safety. An aggressive guy and a good leader. To be honest with you, if they were to look at Collins, it would be because they don't have faith in Shamarko Thomas, who was a third-round draft pick in 2013, and they want to move Mike Mitchell to strong safety and have him picking up more of the underneath stuff and playing more in the box. I can get behind that, to be honest with you, but that depends on whether the team wants to start a rookie free safety. I would find that very unlikely just because free safety has typically been a veteran's position on this team. I don't recall any safety, Troy included, who started regularly as a rookie. If they were to take Collins, and I'm not saying that won't happen, I wouldn't bet on it. I would think they'd want Mitchell to man more of an in-the-box safety type of job, and maybe that could be better for him too.
All right, so we're getting real close to time, and all this about the safeties and stuff, I love it because I'm a big time defense fan. I'm a big Bears fan, so defense is like in my blood and it courses through my veins 24/7. And one of the reasons I love Troy Polamalu so much is being a Bears fan, watching Walter Payton jump over the pile on the offensive side of the ball, and then seeing Troy Polamalu basically do the same thing from the defensive side has been, the first time I saw that, I was like, you know what, this is somebody I'm going to want to watch for the rest of my life. And
I hadn't thought of that. That's a great comparison. I'd never thought of that, but yeah, it's the same thing. That's crazy.
We talked to Jack Finn, and he was like, well, I'm glad that you pick him as, one of your best safeties in the last 10 years rather than, Ed Reed and stuff. And I was like, well, I mean, there's just nobody to compare him to. There's nobody who could play safety / linebacker like that. And it's just great. But unfortunately, we're running low on time. So the last real quick thing, if you can give us, is what is your kind of hope for next year? What is the realistic kind of outcome that we can expect? You have a unique ability to kind of connect with the fans. You did before in your old job, and you definitely do now. So if you can kind of give us what your peers, the fans, are kind of expecting for next year. Is your schedule's tough this coming year? Not as tough as it could have been, but it's looking pretty tough. And we want to know what do you expect record wise? I know that's real early, and we're doing some heavy speculation right now, but just kind of give us a generalized area.
I want to say iron sharpens iron. It's kind of a motif that Mike Tomlin brought up as far as how difficult their schedule was in 2008, the most difficult schedule of a Super Bowl champion in the history of the league. They played great teams that year, and they're going to play a lot of great teams next year too. It's intimidating for sure. They're going to have to get better in a hurry if they're going to compete with that, to be honest with you. I think 9-7 probably fits them a little bit better. I'm just not sure. Defensively, they're going to have everything together. I'm not sure they're going to be able to generate a pass rush, and they're playing some great quarterbacks, some great passing games, and they're going up against great defenses that can, really impact the way they're moving the ball on offense. They're going to need to make plays to win next year. I know that sounds obvious, but I'm talking takeaways and sacks, your splash defensive plays, and that's been what they haven't done over the last 2 years, and I'm not sure. The draft, free agency, internal improvement, I don't think we're going to see huge leaps in that area. So with that, I think the offense can carry a team probably to a 9-7 record. I think they'll be good, but I think fans are going to be awfully disappointed at the end of the year, even though for all we know, they may overachieve a little bit too. I think 2016 is really the year for this team. As far as putting everything together for what they have, what their plan has been. In 2016, I think you're going to see them, climb back into elite status, but their defense is going to need another year of improvement.
Okay, we are right at the 1 hour mark, and we want to give you an opportunity to plug everything. I think in an email I told you we'd introduce you as like the new masterful Steelers authority and king or something like that. And I wanted to just give you the opportunity to sit here and say, everything that is about your new job with USA Today, what it's all about, how they can find you, Twitter, Facebook, anything, and just kind of open it up to you. Anything that we didn't get to that you thought we should have, you can critique us and tell us how horrible we've done or how great we've done, and dig into Kyle a little bit, because I always enjoy that. And so the floor is yours. Go ahead. You have a couple of minutes before we wrap up.
All right. Well, I'm just probably going to pitch the new venture here. It's a website run by USA Today called Steelers Wire. It's a name that USA Today is looking to kind of brand along with their quick hits section, which is known as the Sports Wire. They're looking to kind of brand it along with that, but it's very exciting because this is the first team-specific USA Today site. They're two of their largest digital properties that they have right now, For the Win and The Big Lead, two very popular sites. It's probably going to look a lot like that. I'm hoping to draw maybe even 10% of the kind of traffic that they get and the notoriety that they have. So it's great territory. I definitely think I outkicked my coverage quite a bit as far as what they're offering and what we're going to be doing. But I can't even tell you how excited I am for it. It's going to be it's going to be a great ride. I think this year is going to be a lot of fun as far as what the team is going to do, what we're going to have available on the site, and we're looking to launch probably later next week, toward the end of March, for the sake of giving you something definitive. I'm not exactly sure yet what day it'll be, but definitely by the end of March. And when we do, I'm definitely going to be sending links out, and any retweets or anything else you can give me would be hugely appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. You called us, you said, oh, I'm changing positions, and I'm taking on a new venture and everything. I was like, dang, now we might not get him, but you still agreed to come on. And then I was like, oh man, he's with USA Today. We're big time now, Kyle. So we have to kind of mind our P's and Q's for this one. But it's been.
And then I didn't.
And then he didn't. So, but it's.
Believe me, I haven't changed. And if I wasn't everything that I was in this podcast, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. I'm not that great of a writer. I'm not that well connected, so it's a fan perspective for a fan site. You know, we're looking to really push that kind of feeling, that kind of mentality. We really want to find the fans who love this team as much as we do, and we're going to enjoy doing it. You know, that's really what this is all about. And I can't say it enough. I can't even begin to describe how excited I am. This is, you know, a dream come true, and something that I honestly wonder sometimes, you know, if there's still a 10% chance that somebody's pulling a huge prank on me, and none of this is even real. So I'm going to live it up as long as I can, I guess. And certainly, you know, anytime you guys want me on, I'd be more than happy to be on. I really enjoy doing these kinds of things. I like talking to other passionate fans, and if other people enjoy listening to it, then I'm all for it.
Well, we will definitely be looking to have you on right at the draft time. Definitely want to get your take as to what's going on, and hopefully you won't be too taken up. I know that'll be crazy busy for you, but you know, we're definitely going to need your input.
Yeah, I'd love to be there.
Can you kind of give everybody out how they can get you on Twitter and stuff like that? Follow you on Twitter? Is that something that you do personally, or do you rather do that through the page?
My Twitter account, Neal Coolong, NealCoolong. You can hit me up there. We have reserved a Twitter account, The Steelers Wire, but we haven't done anything with it yet other than follow a couple key people. We don't even have a picture up there yet. We just got that egg thing or whatever that is. When we go live, we'll have that up and functioning and everything like that. So that'll probably be the more interesting site to follow than me. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, we're going to be active within you know, Steelers hashtags on Instagram as well. I don't know what the name of that is off the top of my head, but we'll get all that out to you.
Outstanding. Hey, thank you so much, Neal, for coming on. We really appreciate it. But we gotta let you go. We have about 10 minutes before we have to jump into another one with Jess from the Cardinals. So
nice.
Yeah.
Tell Jess I said hi.
All right.
He's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah.
You guys have a good weekend.
Hey,
You
you too,
too.
Neal. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Once again, that was Neal Coolong, who is the writer for Steelers Wire and USA Today Sports. Neal is definitely a passionate Steelers fan and possibly a storyteller.
Well, he definitely paints a picture when he talks. That's for sure. One thing that I really liked was just that when he goes to answer a question, he gives you everything for it, and that's, I mean, the true nature of a passionate fan is somebody who takes you on a journey when they describe, you know, their fandom, and that just, I was impressed with that. It was great.
That dude's taxes have got to be impeccable. I mean, either that or he's like so busy having a good time that he doesn't have any receipts. It's one or the other. But still, you know, a lot of good information and a lot of good insight. My personal little revelation from that was all the biz about Dick LeBeau and how, you know, it's just time to move on. And I guess for whatever reason, I just had not considered that as a possibility, you know, in terms of why he was let go or not re-signed or however you want to say it. It is definitely a new viewpoint to me, at least, but one that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't think people have really come to terms with it. I think when they think of Dick LeBeau and they think of Troy Polamalu and they think of James Harrison and Brett Kiesel, I mean, they think Steelers. Those guys are the Steelers, and it was a tough thing for them to take, and that's just going to be the nature of it. And he did a really good job of really making it so that we could understand why those things happened and why they will happen.
And I'll say, I felt a little awkward in the interview because, like you said, when I think of the Steelers, I think of those guys. I think of that defense. You know, Ben Roethlisberger is there, but I'm thinking more of the defense. And so him going like, no, quit. Why are you focusing on that? Don't do that. That's years ago, but that's all I can fixate on in my head. I know that it's passed on, but that was so much of the team's identity. It's, you know, in a lot of ways it was a reality check to just kind of have that experience and look at the Steelers in a whole new way. You know, the correct way, definitely, but definitely an eye opener in that regard. I guess I just had not been evaluating the Steelers from an unbiased perspective. So, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep judging them biasedly. That's way easier.
And let's not gloss over the fact that Neal, great addition, knows his stuff, Can't wait to talk to him again. He's going to be so valuable to us, especially, after the draft and just knowing the stuff that he knows. I mean, he lives, breathes, and dies Steelers. So I'm very excited to have him back on the show. If you are listening to this and you're a big fan of Neal, just know that we will have him on again.
And if you're interested in us, which you probably aren't, but who knows? Maybe you're a big fan of Bad Decisions. Hey, FBIApodcast.com. We are the Football is America podcast. We have a website. Our podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher and Pocket Cast and a whole bunch of others that I don't even remember anymore. We're out there. Email us, fbiapodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to have you back. Not going to be offended if you're like, you guys are terrible. I'm not doing it. Totally get it. Fine with that.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you so much.